Alright, what you see here is a Hunter Stratford ceiling fan. It is in the bright brass finish and 52 inches, and I'm showing it with the medium oak blades showing down this time. I got this off of Facebook Marketplace with Nathan, and about a town or two over from where I live. It's in the same exact town that I work in, so at least it was pretty local in a sense. Server wanted 15 for this, but I offered 20 just because there was another fan that he was selling with it, but I left that one behind, so I figured I'd give 20 just to kind of make up for only grabbing this one. This fan definitely needed quite a bit of a cleaning to it. It was definitely installed in the kitchen. The top of the blades were still pretty dusty / greasy. Not sticky greasy, but you could tell that the dust on it was kind of stuck on it from the grease. I got it cleaned up pretty well. The glass shades were definitely not clear looking like they are now, so those definitely got cleaned up pretty well. And the brass finish cleaned up very nicely as well. That was a bit unshiny in some areas, but like now it's basically sparkling. But yeah, it's definitely a very big childhood fan for me. I've seen these fans quite a bit as a kid in the antique brass finish in the Dominican Republic at a church. It's still there to this day, but also there's a place somewhat nearby me. I filmed that a year or two ago. The one that has the brick one, and that one's a pretty big childhood fan for me as well. But yeah, this and the white one are pretty much the most common ones you can find. This was sold from like 1998 until 2000, early 2003. The white one was sold from like 1999 until early 2003. The antique brass one was introduced in 2001. Same thing with the brick version as well. And then in 2002, they introduced the brushed nickel one and discontinued the brick version. So the brick one and the brushed nickel ones definitely are the more harder ones to find out of the 5 finishes that these came in, as both of those were only sold for about a year. But that's just based from what I can tell from the catalogs, because as a lot of us know, a lot of the catalogs and fan companies and such, they always will leave out a few models or different finishes that you don't see in the catalogs, so there's always a few from that we didn't know about and such, or we don't have data on due to like not having them from catalogs and such. But yeah, I really do like the oak finishes on these fans from the later 90s, early 2000s. I feel like it's more like a light oak, but it's definitely nicer looking, in my opinion, compared to the standard oak that you see on every other fan company. I just feel like it makes it look more different. But to each their own. I think it looks more like actual wood in a sense versus the laminated oak that you see on almost every fan and such. But yeah, it's from the year 2000, from the first quarter. There's the Hunter logo right there. There's some tag on the top. It has this type of mounting hardware, which I'm not the biggest fan of in terms of installation wise, but I actually do like the look of this type more than the ones from the 90s, or like the earlier 90s and such, before they changed over to this. Especially with the ring that covers the screws. And here it is, the white shades. I really do love how these shades look on this fan. And this fan does use the Air Max motor, as all Stratfords do. But yeah, it definitely gives off a very good amount of lighting. And it's actually my first time seeing one of these with the medium oak finish showing down. I've never seen like any pictures of them with this finish. And I gotta say, I do like it quite a bit. I definitely like it more with the rosewood just because it's more childhood looking. And I think it's a nicer combination. Definitely gives off a very good amount of lighting, which is no surprise. Alright. Let's go ahead and start off on low. And in a sense, this is basically a light version of a Summer Breeze Plus as well. As everything on it is exactly the same except for the light kit having 4 lights instead of 3. It's funny, with certain lighting, it definitely does look more like a light oak, bleached oak versus this medium oak. I mean, there are different tones to oak. There's a lot of companies tend to use the darker look of it. But yeah, these clear shades on this fan, I definitely feel gives it a very nice look to it. But yeah, it's definitely a fan I can see being installed like in a kitchen, a living room, bedroom, almost any room in the house for the most part. In restaurants, like there's a lot of places I could see these being installed just because of how it's a very simple looking fan, but it's also not a cheaply made one at the same time. It's definitely more of a higher end one in a sense. I mean, it was sold at Home Depot, but like for a home center fan, it's definitely a much higher end one that you could pick up at Home Depot back in the day. It's probably retail for like about $100 or something like that. I'm 100% sure. But yeah, it definitely was a good choice. Like I'm back when hunters were actually still like the Home Depot hunters were still like the same quality as the regular hunters. Nowadays they're a lot cheaper quality compared to the stuff you can find from their website and such. There's like a lot of the ones they sell and like home centers that are like usually have a very slow high speed to them and such. It's more like a medium. So it's kind of funny because I like the Summer Breeze Plus more of the oak blades from what I've seen in pictures of them. But I like this one more with the rosewood. And I think it's more because of the 4-light configuration. With 3-light fans, I definitely do like a more of like an oak look instead of rosewood. But for 4 lights, I definitely like a more of like a rosewood look. This is something I've noticed in terms of like my preferences with fans that either having 3 or 4 lights. Usually I prefer the 3-light ones with oak blades, and if it's 4 lights, it's usually I prefer them with rosewood. You know, it does depend on the fan and the setting it's in as well. Alright, let me go ahead and move it up to medium. It's kind of sad though that Hunter's fan selection for home centers is definitely taking a dive in quality. I mean, back then they at least like a lot of them were like the same quality as basically the ones they'd sell in showrooms, except for like the prestige selection and such that they had, or which were even more better quality than their regular lineup. I mean, honestly, it's not Casablanca quality, but I mean, the movement of this is literally the same as like any other 2000s Hunter fan that had like that was made before the quality took a dive and such. I gotta say though, like for like the 80s Hunters, there was definitely the better ones. And then the 90s, he decreased the quality a bit. Still great fans, but decreased it. And then I feel in the 2000s, like with the Air Max motors and such, they definitely improved the quality in a sense, especially with the 42-inch models that they would sell. A lot of those from the late 90s, early 2000s era, like the Beacon Hills and all those were the ones. Those are definitely powerhouses compared to like, the 90s Hunters that were like 42 inches, like the Summer Breeze, Coastal Breeze, and such. They weren't the worst fans, I mean, but they just aren't as much of a powerhouse like those, the ones from the late 90s and early 2000s, like the Stratfords and such, or the Stratford 2s, Beacon Hills, Bayports, and such. And it's funny because if you were to give this more of a modernish looking finish, it would still look like something you'd see nowadays being sold. There's a tiny bit dated looking, just with certain design features that it has. But it's really not that far off from like what you'd see today and such. And it's hard to believe that this design right here is already 20 years old as of this year. Well, 21-ish, 22-ish years. Yeah, this is definitely a fan I'd put in the kitchen, like the way it is right here. And I'd probably have it with the rosa blaze. It's got like to look a bit more. Like, there's a lot of houses that I went to as a kid that I could see like one of these in there with like the medium oak blades facing down. With like lighter wood cabinets and such. Alright, now to move it up to the high speed. Has a little bit of a wobble to it. I mean, a lot of the Hunter fans that have these mounting brackets do have a bit of a wobble, but this one's definitely more so because one of the blades is out of clock. Or the blade arms, more specifically. This is the main reason why I took down that Passport 2 in the kitchen, because when it would wobble like this, it would rub against the medallion and it would make an annoying squeaking sound. I actually could have put another fan there with a medallion, just to cover up that big hole that's going in the kitchen. But I figured I'd just do a hugger fan just so I don't have to use a medallion. Cause I really don't like the look of ceiling fans with medallions, especially if they're not like an ornate looking one. The plain looking ones I'm just really not the biggest fan of. Well, it depends on the room too. I wonder what is it that's making it. It might be one of the shades that's just a tiny bit loose. Oh, it's one of them hitting the vibrating against the glass. Well, you know, it's definitely a very good performing fan without a question. And these are a little bit more powerful than your typical Spinner Motor 100 from the 90s, as much as a lot of collectors don't like to admit it. It's not a whole lot more powerful, but it definitely moves a bit more air. I mean, it is a spinner motor at the end of the day, but it's definitely a bit more powerful. And interestingly enough, this fan actually draws 2.85 amps, not 0.85 like a lot of other 100 fans do. So I was actually pretty surprised to see that. Control the light. Definitely want to find an antique brass one, a white version, brick, and well, I mean, definitely would like to find one in all the other finishes. I really do like how these fans look, and definitely could find a use for one in each finish, depending on the room. It's definitely a fan I consider installing it whenever I get my own place. So definitely a fan that like I feel would look really nice on again a kitchen with like white oak cabinets and have like a fall setting, like the autumn leaves falling and such. I don't know what it is. Is every time I see like this, these type of 100 fans, I just think of like a things like not Thanksgiving, but like in between like October and November feeling and such. Definitely like a fall time feel from it. Alright, we're gonna go ahead and do a spin down. And I'll show it on reverse. But yeah, these shades I definitely do plan to try out on some other 100 fans in a brass finish with like a 4-arm white kit. And already on Westminster that I got from Cole a while back had non-hunter ones that came with it. They almost look identical to these, but they're not. But speaking of which, I definitely should try swapping the white kits on this and the Westminster, so I can get a video of this with a 3 light, and technically it'll be a 7 Beast Plus, and with the Westminster I can have both the 3 light version and 4 light version videos out of it. funny, sometimes I look at it, it looks like a chrome fan with white oak blades. Just for the lighting and such. Spinning on this fan is like literally a minute and a half in all honesty. It's about the same amount of length and spin down on the low profile plus in my kitchen naturally now that I think about it. But yeah, let me go ahead and show it on reverse. Now for medium. All right, now for high. Interestingly enough, it's not even wobbling at all. And when I tested it with the rotor blades, it did have a little bit of a wobble still on reverse, but the fact that it's not wobbling at all right now, it's very surprising. But yeah, that's a pretty big surprise. Strange that's doing that. You know what I'm looking at? The blades really aren't that out of alignment, to be honest. Could just be maybe the blades warping downwards over time a tiny bit. Might have made it wobble more with the rotor blades facing down. Something I know, something like a fan of mine that I test, if I have the blades facing a certain, either one side down or the other, it'll wobble more due to like the blades sometimes drooping downwards over time. Go ahead and shut it off. And that sound that you hear up there is actually the that plastic ring around the canopy, because it is cracked right through the center on one spot. So that's just that vibrating. But yeah, that'll be it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more videos to come.